Chess is one of the oldest games still being played today. It's once a symbol of status and intelligence. Now being played and mastered by anybody. So whether you are a factory worker or a high-powered CEO, truly anybody can learn how to play and excel at this game. So now let us begin with the pieces that go into the game of chess. There are two rows of pieces that go onto the chessboard. The first row, which I call the front line, is lined with 8 pieces called pawns. These are generally the smallest pieces on the board. After that, you have 2 pieces called rooks, which generally on your basic boards look like castle turrets, followed by 2 knights, which are those are the ones that look like the tops of horses, followed by 2 bishops. Now, try not to get bishops confused with pawns. They're generally larger, and the top of them looks kind of like a bishop or a pope's hat. Finally, the last 2 pieces that go on the board, you have your king and your queen. Kings generally will have a cross on the top, whereas queens will just have a crown, as illustrated in this picture. So now that you know the different pieces that come with a chessboard, now I'm going to show you how those pieces are placed. First thing you need to do is you got to be able to correctly position the board. Generally, chessboards come with a black and white 8x8 checkered board. Sometimes you might get a red and black. Regardless, you're going to need to make sure that either the red square or the white square is in the bottom right corner before you put your pieces on the board. Now, the front row, which will be the second square from the bottom, that's going to be all lined with your pawns. Now, for the back row, in each of the 2 corners, you're going to have your rooks. Now, those are the ones that look like the castle turrets. Next to those, you're going to have your knights, followed by your bishops, remembering not to get them confused with your pawns. Now, this is where some people get it confused. When positioning your king and your queen, you always got to make sure that the queen is on its own color. So if you have white pieces, you're going to position your queen onto a white or red square, and then vice versa if you have the black pieces. Black queen goes onto the black square, as pictured here. Alright, so now that you know all the different pieces and where they go, now I'm going to teach you the movements that the pieces can make. First, I'll start off with the pawns. Now, your very first move with your pawns, you can choose to make 1 square movement, or you can do 2. But after that first movement, pawns can only move forward 1 piece at a time. The only exemption from that would be if a pawn were to capture another piece. If that's the case, then they have to do it in a diagonal motion. Now, rooks have a lot more movement than the pawns do. They're still limited to forward and lateral movement, but they can go anywhere from 1 space to clear across the board. Like I said, so as long as they're moving forward or lateral. Now, bishops are similar to the rooks in their freedom of movement, but they cannot go forward or lateral. Their movements have to be in diagonal motion and on the same color square that they started off on. So if you have a bishop that's on a white or red square, it can only make diagonal movements on red or white squares. Same goes for the pieces beyond a black square. Now knights are a little trickier. Knights make what is called an L-shaped movement. They can either go up one space and to the left or right two spaces, or they can go forward and back two spaces, and then left or right one space. Once I show you the diagram on the movements of the pieces, it'll be a lot easier to understand. Now you have the queen. The queen has the most freedom of movement over any piece on the board. It's considered one of the most dangerous pieces. The queen has combined the movements of both the rook and the bishop. So she can go forward all across the board, backwards, diagonal, left and right. Now the king is similar to the pawn in which it can only move one space at a time. But it could still only move one space even on its first initial movement. It doesn't have that two-space window like the pawn does. Now I'm going to show you the illustration of the movements of the pieces. The piece is shown in roughly the center of the board, and the X marks the spots where the pieces can position themselves. Okay, so now you have all the basics. Now I highly encourage yourself a chessboard. Learn it, master it, and most importantly, have fun with it, because personally it's one of my favorite board games of all time. Thank you very much.